Hi, welcome to Cash Up, a weekly show where we'll converse with amazing folks in DFIR. And today I'm so excited to be joined by Brian Hussey. Brian has worked a variety of roles in the digital forensics field for 15 years across multiple industries, including support of law enforcement, government, consulting, and academia. He's currently the Vice President of Cyber Threat Response at Sentinel One. Prior to his current role, he was the Vice President of Cyber Threat Detection and Response for TrustWave, as well as an adjunct professor teaching computer forensics at George Mason University. Brian was also a senior digital forensic analyst at Harris, where he supervised contractors serving in the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Investigative Analysis Unit and the Computer Incident Response Team's Computer Forensic Investigation Unit for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. While at Harris, he worked a variety of case types, including major crimes, network intrusions, malware analysis, counterterror and counterintelligence, cyber investigations, and more. Additionally, Brian designed the FBI's Advanced Technical Analysis Training for Network Intrusion and Malware Analysis. Prior to that, Brian was a team lead for the Commercial Forensic Services Division at Mantech, where he oversaw forensic investigations and e-discovery services for a variety of international and domestic cases, and worked as a computer forensic examiner. Brian earned his Master of Forensic Science, High-Tech Crime Investigations, Computer Forensics, and Network and Security from the George Washington University, as well as a Bachelor of Arts in English and Public Speaking from Linfield University. Brian has published multiple articles pertaining to malware, threat hunting, and response, including his 2020 multi-part series on Golden Spy. Brian finds time to give back to the community and is currently the president of the International Fraternity of Cybercrime Investigators, IFCI. I met Brian as a student of his at GMU. I believe I was in his first class he taught there. I really enjoyed the class and luckily did all right. I feel lucky to have had the opportunity to have learned from Brian's depth and breadth of experience in DFIR. And with that, hi, Brian. How are you?
Great, thank you. Wow, what a review going through a career so quickly. It was yeah, it was
We've
exciting.
got a lot of really cool things in your career. Would you mind sharing a little bit about how you even got into digital forensics?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it was a bit of a roundabout journey for me, but I think that's true for a lot of people. When I was in college, like you said, English literature and public speaking is not what you would think would be that direct route to a highly technical digital forensic type of career. But
Mm-hmm.
I was young and chasing what I loved. I loved stories. I loved dissecting them and putting them together and analyzing them. I mean that was kind of my
Sounds like
passion.
forensics.
That does, doesn't it? I mean, there is a link there. It's you have to think about it for a minute, but in reality, in action, it really did serve me well. But I was at that I was graduating and the dot-com bubble was bursting and people were going off to sell insurance. And no offense to insurance salesmen, but that's not what I wanted to do. So I had I had some friends who were took off to Japan. And at the time I could barely find it on a map. It was this program called the JET program where they would teach in high schools or elementary schools in some random parts of Japan and teaching English. And so I decided, you know what, they were having a great time. I thought I would chase that down. So I went off and applied and got sent to this tiny little town in southern tropical Japan. Not a word could speak English. I would walk on the street and cars would stop to stare. But I had the time of my life, and I ended up spending 3 years there traveling
Wow.
and traveling to Asia, traveling all over the place, and just launching my adventures. But when that kind of came to an end, I was like, well, what do I need to do? What do I want to do? And I was interested in investigations, and I looked into all kinds of options. Ironically, I studied like blood smear. I was one of those nerds that loved the profiling stuff, and I studied blood spatter and actually and all the different ways to profile criminal activity. And I thought that was an option, but um, and I wanted to work with the FBI, and I thought the best chance to get in was, well, I realized after a while that digital forensics was the best way to kind of get into what I wanted to do. So I started looking, and there was at the time, this is back in what, 2000, early 2000, and there was nothing out there. But George Washington was the first and the only
Yes.
time master's degree in the US. I think there's one out in Ireland, but I ended up chasing that down and moved to DC with nothing but a bag coming out of Japan, and um, started that program, and that kind of led one thing led to another of how I and I had to start from the basics, right? There was all these prerequisites, learning networking, learning hardware, learning all the basics. But I was lucky enough to be able to get into the field early. There were
Yes.
very few other people at the time really doing this. They're ones coming out of the intel communities and some of them leaving law enforcement. But other than that, the field is very open, a very green field. And so the opportunity to make your name and grow and go to interesting positions was really open at the time. So that's what I did. And as I did it, I just came to love investigating. I came to love the putting the pieces together and having that
Yes.
aha moment when you actually solve a crime. It's just it's so exciting and so fulfilling, and so that became my passion, and it just kind of grew from there.
I love that. That feeling. I cannot express. I mean, you get it, and so many of our listeners do. But that feeling when you're in a complete puddle of frustration, and then you have the aha moment, and it's almost like the aha moment always comes right off of this moment of extreme frustration, and just the feeling, the rush that you get when you finally figure out that piece of the puzzle or find that piece of evidence that cracks open either a new area or solves and answers what your question was. I don't think that there is a greater feeling than that sense. Oh,
That rush was
yes.
like I remember we had one case. It was a bank out in Dominican Republic, and embezzlement and all kinds of stuff. And I was working with one of our guys. It was very early on. I was able to get in as like a junior analyst. I was lucky. I was learning all kinds of things from scratch. I mean, and again, without a whole lot of hands-on technical background, it had the ability to learn from some of the best in the world in my first job. To be able to show me all the right hands, I had all this book learning, but the hands-on I was
Right.
lacking. It was such a great opportunity. But I was working with some senior investigators, putting together these video files. Long story short, this bank president had stolen hundreds of millions of dollars, and then tried to hide his activity by re-imaging the video, because it turns out where they were planning all the nefarious activities, there was actually a video with
Oh.
audio of the conference
Oh.
center. And they thought, oh, so they'll go and they'll repartition the server and put a new OS, and thought they were fine. But I was working with some really brilliant people putting these video files back together from scratch, recovering from unallocated, and not only just you couldn't just there weren't video files. They had to go into a certain way for it all to work. All the files had to go together correctly. And the day we got it, and suddenly we're watching a video of the other side discussing their criminal plans. It was like, whoa, talk about
Wow.
breaking a case wide open. It was, yeah, incredible feeling.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like almost the same as like Brian Moran's work in RDB bitmap cache reorganization, so you can see the whole picture of the screen at that moment, kind of work, and it's really fascinating. I'm assuming that was CCTV, and all of the different stream files that can be arduous to
Oh
pull that
yeah,
together. And I'm sure that was before there were any tools that existed that did that work for you. So that's just incredible work.
completely by hand. That's right.
Oh, oh my gosh. So that brings you to today. What kinds of things are you working on in your role now?
So yeah, with Sentinel One, I mean, really, really exciting. I think so. My career I guess, over time, where I was really into the digital forensics from a law enforcement point of view. From there, moving into really following various APT and cybercrime threat actors, and on the threat intelligence side, and growing teams that did the both of that. But really, where I'm focused now is well, at Sentinel One, I've got the MDR team, and that's
Okay.
24/7, 365 analysis and response. The deep dive digital forensics investigative team, and then my threat hunting team. And threat hunting is really an exciting part of my career now. I think it's grown in so many ways, from from the old-fashioned, with guys that started with squirrels and that, the network traffic and really interesting stuff. But it's all about having a really good EDR now and having access to that endpoint and be able to, and all the different forensic artifacts that exist within the endpoint. I mean, just the amount of data is endless from just a single endpoint. And now with new technology, we're able to access thousands or hundreds of thousands of endpoints in one shot. And it enables us to bring the battle to the attackers. I mean, before it was security was completely reactive. Everything's reactive,
Yes.
waiting for something to happen, and then we respond. And that's why I really love the focus now on threat hunting, of being able to proactively look instead of waiting for them to make a mistake. And it's yeah, I think it's an exciting part of the field right now. It's where I put a lot of my focus.
I think that's a really good point, because so much of what we do in incident response, it's even sitting there in the title, is that we wait until bad has happened. And then we come in and stop the bleeding, start the breathing, and get everything back online, figure out what happened. I think that there is some value, immense value, to preventing organizations and governments and agencies and organizations from ever feeling the worst day. And with threat hunting, you can assist in preventing some of those worst days. And people don't necessarily see the value in that. They don't necessarily realize how much they've been saved, but having done incident response, you know how much can be saved with good threat hunting. And I think that's such a proactive is the way of the future. If we can't, we're going to still have reactive situations, because they're
Sure.
still going to get through. We know that will happen. We've had enough big things happen so far in 2021 to be very cognizant of that. However, preventing what we can via threat hunting, and that's exciting in itself, right? Like figuring out the artifacts and what the telltales are of the opportunities. That is, being proactive in that way is exciting in its own.
Absolutely. And I mean, it all feeds itself. Like I said, with my team, I've got an MDR team on 5, 6 million different endpoints. And that telemetry leads directly into threat intelligence, right? Where
Yes.
you have to monitor all industries, all geographic regions, and look for trends as they're emerging, like brand new trends. And we're like, whoa, that's something. And we feed that into our threat intel, and that feeds into our hunting. And then
Yes.
every forensic investigation is its own collection of threat intelligence. So that's a successful attack. So that when we look at all the details and IOCs and TTPs and all the stuff we can pull from a forensic investigation, that leads right into our hunting. And having the ability to have all three of these teams working cohesively together with that underlying threat intelligence, that's exciting to me. That's the power of what we can do with modern technology, forensic technology, XDR technology, and the right application of it. It really, I think, takes the next step up in what we can do for our clients.
And you're right in not working in silos. Katie Nichols was on a few weeks ago. We were talking specifically about how digital forensics examiners and hunters can work better together, and how that cycle needs to be more correlated, and how there are sometimes these differentiated teams that do these specialized functions, which they need to because they're so technical and in depth, but how we bridge that communication. And what's really neat about you in your organization being able to work with all three of those teams is you can ensure that that information that's being gleaned from the forensics investigations is feeding the threat hunting teams, that it's making it to the endpoint detection systems. And I think that that is such a critical role that we need to remember for all of these things to play together. And it is important for digital forensics examiners to check out threat hunting talks. Like, especially this year, things are free. Check out the SANS Threat Hunting Incident Response Summit if you're a digital forensicator who isn't really thinking about threat hunting, because we need to understand it so we know how to best share and better each other and allow each other to be able to perform our functions better. It's
Yeah.
great.
And I do as much cross training as well with my internal
Yes.
teams. So because the skill sets, they're all like a little bit different, but so similar too. And taking one from MDR to put them with threat hunting or threat hunting them and have them focus on digital forensic investigations, and and that helps build opportunities within your team. and knowledge across and skills across your entire team that can kind of roll on both sides. So, I mean, I think that's great to have those opportunities to work together.
I love the fact that you're able to do that as a leader as well, because I think people enjoy exposure and learning new things, and it helps them do their role better because they see where they fit in the overall arching scheme, and they may develop a passion or skill in a new area and decide that that's where they want to be. And I think giving people that ability to move within an organization, to learn new skills, to grow and develop, to see how their piece fits, I think that gives a lot of satisfaction. So I love the fact that you're able to do that as a leader, and that says a lot about your leadership style, which is something I kind of want to delve into. How you've gone from working your hands-on cases like you did when you were doing things with the FBI to leading teams that are doing massively different but related functions and coordinating that and building those groups. How were you able to make that transition? How do you leave hands-on casework where you're getting that aha moment that we were talking about and that thrill? How do you make that transition?
It is such a great question. It was such a tough decision. I mean, yeah, I loved being an investigator, hands-on, getting that aha moment. And I mean, some of the cases just fascinating that I got to do, and cases that they make you feel good as a person to know you're making a difference in the world and you're keeping people safe. And I mean, it's such a huge part of my life. But at some point, with the FBI, fantastic group, fantastic people. And they're still out there doing amazing work. My old unit, I think their names changed, they moved a bit, but they're still doing just amazing things. And but at some point it came to me. I'm like, well, where do you want to go in your career? It's been however many years of doing hands-on, 8, 9, 10, well, whatever it was. And it's like, well, what do you what's the eventual goal? And even at some point, when I was at in Japan, I told you I got to travel all around Asia. I
Yeah.
spent a couple months doing my dive master, where I was literally in southern Thailand, leading dives every day, seeing like whale sharks, amazing things on a boat, living the time of my life. But the ironic thing is, after a couple months of doing that every day, I would wake up and think, "Oh God, time to get on the boat again, time to go diving again."
Oh, when you
And it's
lose
like
that thrill. Oh,
yeah, you lose the thrill. And I mean, after after however many years of doing hands-on investigations, I was just looking for something new, a new thrill. Um, and well, I mean, now I would go back to that dive boat in a minute. But so that's what it was for me. And it's taking, going into a new field, or going from the management side of, all right, how do we build a business that is fascinating for my investigators, where they can grow, and helping my clients, and doing it in a cost-effective manner, and building a team of experts that are making a difference, well, in their investigations, and also growing a business that's successful from, I mean, never, like when I was investigating, having a strong revenue, and all those, and building a business was the last thing on my mind. But
absolutely.
it's its own thrill, being able to go out and build these teams, and grow a business. And that's so I mean, that was the jump I made. And when I did, most of the hands-on kind of stopped there. Um, once you hit that kind of director and up level, you're not on the keyboard doing the actual cases much anymore. It was tough. And sometimes I look back and remember the thrilling investigations, and definitely have some nostalgia. But like the thrill of what we're doing right now, and being able to guide and lead, and grow new investigators, and the thrill of seeing them learn and grow, and is also just really, it's its own thrill. So I don't know, it's
Absolutely.
just the evolution of a career. And
Well,
yeah.
I think you make some great points, and there's so many things you said that I actually want to dig into. It's really fascinating to me. when you leave investigations, and I went through a similar phase, um, what you, I think, have to focus on is how are you growing your impact? And by leading these teams and by building up these examiners and building up these skill sets in the way that you're doing it, you're actually increasing your impact than you did being on keyboard one case at a time. And I think that's a natural evolution. So I think that's something that people have to remember as they're facing that journey in their career, which does happen, that you have the opportunity now to have a larger impact and scale, right? Just like we talk about how there's more value to being able to look at a million endpoints than just one at a time. It's the same exact kind of thing. You're being able to have more touch points on more cases at a time and be able to assist with that in different ways. So I think that's important. Now, you did mention that you used to get to do a lot of cases that were very, very fulfilling. Would you mind sharing maybe some of those cases? I love that.
Sure. Yeah, well, I mean, over a career, I mean, we've had all kinds of really big cases, really interesting cases. Um, you mentioned, of course, the Golden Spy one. Maybe we can talk about that a bit later. That's just was not long ago from a threat hunt. But when I go back to what really formed me, my most impact as a forensic investigator, like, for me, the most impactful cases, the ones that I always remember.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one comes to mind. I remember. So this was, in fact, in my FBI days when we didn't do much child porn investigations because we were mainly focused on malware and advanced, uh, bigger name cases, more higher profile. But sometimes, of course, they try the malware defense. They'd say, well, it wasn't me who collected all of this terrible
Oh
illicit
yeah.
material. The malware did. I had malware in my system, and it did it. And and when the client would go that route, not client, excuse me, when a suspect would go that route, they would sometimes send that to us. So I got a case, and it was, of course, terrible because you see children being abused, which is just heart aching and heart wrenching, and when you have your own children, it's just terrible, terrible to see. But what it ended up being was I was able to take some of these pictures that all the EXIF data was taken out of them, but I was able to find the same pictures from unallocated space and tie latitude and longitude to that, an actual location to these
Oh
pictures.
wow.
That was the aha moment. You're like, wait, this is where these kids actually are.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's in it was within the United States, and we were able to send out a team to this location, and they actually rescued two little girls who've been trapped in a basement for over 2 years.
Oh my
So
gosh.
basement, yeah, and I mean it's terrible, but knowing that we were able to capture to rescue these girls and put this person in jail for so many years was what was just it was really fulfilling, and I mean I hope the girls had a good life after that. But yeah, just knowing that was able to happen was what was a major transformative case for me, knowing the impact that my actions were having on real human lives.
And I think that's something to remember that the work we do in investigations is always impacting people's lives. I don't care if it's because you're saving child abuse victims and your work probably also prevented other victims from being harmed. It did rescue those two little girls, but with it, I'm sure, a very long prison sentence, that person is no longer out there abusing additional children. And you should feel wonderful about being able to contribute to that, and being able to do that by recovering deleted pictures, matching them up, finding the EXIF data, and being able to use that technical problem solving skills to be able to have an effect in the real tangible world is an immensely powerful feeling. And I think it's why a lot of us love what we do so much. But I think it's important to remember also that even if you are more on the incident response side or the cyber investigation side, where maybe you're not doing things with criminal intent, you are really affecting real people's lives in real ways as well. When companies close shop because of ransomware attacks and they lose everything they have, there is the ability that people are losing their jobs. that people are losing their livelihood. And it's not even just the company's worst day. It's those employees who are real human beings who have faces and feelings and families that are affected. And I think it's important that we remember that about our work. I mean, Brett Shaver was just chiming in, saying good people doing good work. And that's exactly it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. But there's also been an interesting shift since 2000. So to me, it's since Stuxnet. That was the
Yeah.
day almost that we transferred from malware targeting data and finance and money to potentially targeting human life, or at
Human
least
being.
infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Right?
Like,
Stuxnet attacks the Natanz nuclear power plant in Iran, overloads nuclear centrifuges. Successful attack from that point of view. But to me, that was that first step where we moved to getting beyond just data. And now you see, there's been other attacks where, the recent one in Florida where it was, a vulnerable team viewer, and somebody comes in and puts like 1,000 or 100 times what the chemicals, the cleaning chemicals are supposed to be into a community's water supply. Well, that was found. That's great. Iran targeting Sadara petrochemical plant in 2017. The malware they used bricked the systems the way a wiper style destructive malware would, but it was just a minor programming bug in their malware. It was designed to cause a massive explosion,
massive.
and this would have, I mean, it would have caused immense amounts of loss of human life. And now even we're looking at ransomware targeting hospitals, which
And
is
that's
just,
exactly it.
then that
The
lead to loss of human life. And I mean, just that transition from, suddenly an IR investigator, in some ways, in some cases, is not just protecting businesses and money, but potentially protecting human life as well. It's been
you're
an
so
interesting,
right.
scary shift.
You're so right, and it is a scary shift. And Stuxnet was so long ago. I mean, we're talking over a decade. And what we have to remember is that the digital world does reach into the physical world. When you're talking about ICS systems, when you're talking about power plants and water plants, when you're talking about biomedical facilities and biomedical devices, and hospitals getting shut down in the middle of surgeries, I mean, those are all very human effects that can happen as a result. And that's what makes our work so critical. It's not always just about the testifying. I mean, that is very, very important. It's not always just about those criminal cases. It is definitely about the work that can happen to, because our lives are so commingled with things that are data. You're right. It's not just data exfil anymore. They're not just looking for the company's secrets. They're not just looking for IP theft. They're not just looking for credit card information to sell credit card numbers. It's not all skimmer data anymore. That those days are long past. The bigger threats are what can happen at larger scales. And, when we look at some of these mass vulnerabilities that have happened in the last 6 months, it is potential that we don't know the true targets or the depth of what that is, because so many organizations are affected by these large scale things, and the potential that these could be used for physical warfare is a very real possibility. And at the end of the day, when you increase the chemicals to a city's water supply, that is digital warfare.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we see it time and again from Russia, from Iran. Every kinetic physical attack Russia has conducted in the last, over the last decade, always has a precursor, or maybe more than a decade, has a precursor of a DDoS, or taking the power systems offline, which is another thing that can lead to just death by itself. And same thing with Iran. They took off Turkey's power grid. I mean,
Georgia.
Georgia,
What would
exactly. Hmm.
I
So,
mean,
so
we've had so many examples.
exactly, and I mean it's so ingrained that line between cyber warfare, cyber espionage, cyber terror, cyber crime. I mean, they all just kind of blend together in fascinating and scary ways. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh. What is the biggest lesson you've taken from casework, where you've worked your cases and you've taken something away from that that you use over and over again in your role today?
Hmm. The
Like, are
biggest
there any skills that you've learned back when you were doing your work at the Bureau and at USDA that even affect you today in the threat hunting world?
I think to me that the biggest thing, and when it comes to what makes a forensic investigator, it's it's not it's part of it is being, you're technical expert. Technical expertise is really important, right? Of course, that's the job, but it's not the whole job. I've seen lots of really good technical people who are smarter than I could ever dream of being. They can't succeed in this role because that's only part of it. The other part is uh, that investigator mindset, that the
Mm.
need to put the puzzle together, the need to see one breadcrumb and follow it until you get to the end. When there's an outlier, when something's out of place, pushing until you know why. If you can't accept something being out of place until you know why it's out of place or why it's there, that's that's key to being an investigator. And that's just that element of your personality is so important to succeed there. And that's I think I was pretty good technically. I was learning, I was growing, I was doing better. But that's the part that I would never give up until I knew why. And I think that's a lot of my success. And then the other side is about communication. Uh,
Mm.
Able to put this into a well-written report that tells a story well, or being able to communicate well with executives and special agents or whoever need to be hear the story and understand it and be able to tell that, whether you're telling it to a jury or whether you're
Sure.
telling it to an executive or lawyers that have no background, and being able to take highly complex subject matter and convert it into something that is easily digestible from a wide variety of audiences. That's really, to me, that's that third element. And to be good at this job, tying all those together is I think the what has really been the key to success, at least in my career, and for a lot of people, I think.
I want to reiterate the three elements you said. You said there's the technical skill, which might not always be the most important. 'Cause you need to have it, but it might not be most important. Then there is the communication and the ability to share and digest the information and put it there. And then the one that I think is the most important is that puzzle solving, the wanting to go in depth and answer the questions. And you're right, those are, I've never heard anyone articulate it that way, but those are the three necessary skills. And the technical is the one you can teach. It is
Yes.
the easiest one to teach. The other two you can grow, but they're harder to grow, right? Like I can send you to a class to learn the ins and outs of Windows registries. I can teach you to send you to a class to learn malware analysis. I cannot easily send you to a class to make you a puzzle solver, to make you be inquisitive. I can lead that. I can demonstrate that. I can get excited about that and see me get excited about that and grow that as a culture. But that is not something you send someone to a class to learn. And I love the fact that you brought that out. In terms of the communication, you specifically, we mentioned it now twice, but your undergrad was in English and public speaking. How do you think that's helped you? And do you have any examples of how being able to communicate well has served you in your career?
Oh yeah, I mean every single day, right? Yeah. When I, like I said, I was kind of chasing my passion. I loved poetry and I loved reading stories and dissecting them. And I mean that's what, but I think that's actually part of it is on the communication side, but I think part of that's also that investigative side
Mm.
and being able to follow. Trying to create when there's all this noise on an endpoint or on hundreds of endpoints, and there's so many things happening. Every second, hundreds of thousands of events of some kind are occurring on endpoints, and finding the one storyline that matters in all of that, and that begins with the actual attack of some kind or nefarious activity of some kind, leading all the way through to the exfiltration and every step along the way that occurred. Part of me, I think, is dissecting the stories, and that mindset, kind of leads to that. So, I mean, I think it was an important part, and being able to communicate is so important. Well, again, I remember another case study from my FBI days. I was actually the first to testify as an expert witness in the U.S. in a card scraping case, memory scraping. So
Oh,
malware that was injected into memory, wasn't even resident in the hard drive, and it was pulling credit card data, and trying to be able to explain something that challenging to it. It was in Eugene, Oregon, that I was testifying against the Russian mafia, cyber mafia, on this.
wow.
And the jury, I mean, a few of them looked like, I mean, I have great respect for them. They did a great job, but a few, like, at first impression, I'm like, almost lumberjacks. I mean, I'm surprised there wasn't like an axe like sitting on shoulder. And I'm like, that's so being able to take that highly complex material and explain it in ways that make sense to this jury was a what was it? I think a challenge, but that's the kind of thing that you get from being able to communicate. So I guess when you're, for the younger folks watching, and you're looking at your your college degree, I think I'm sure your parents, and I'm a parent, I will be as well, but I'll be pushing my kids to engineering because that seems like the most direct path to money and career. But having a variety in your academic background can lead to great success. And just when it comes to simple written communications and being able to speak to an audience and different kinds of executives or lawyers or whoever else you're talking to is just hugely important. Like every single day it serves.
So it's very interesting because I love this concept of finding meaning in poetry or in prose or in a story that's got a lot going on, and being able to find that meaning being such a relatable skill to looking at large, massive amounts of data and being able to determine what's important. That's just it's a really actually poetic way of looking at it. And I do love your point additionally where you're talking about how important the communication is. And we all have to give a report to someone. We have to brief, regardless if it's a general or a director or a CISO or a jury or a lawyer. We have to brief, and we have to be able to write. We talk about it all the time. If you can't write, you're not going to be able to get anywhere in this field. But I think if you have the puzzle and the curiosity and the technical skill, you're going to be able to be an examiner. I think it's going to hold you back from promotion. I really feel that that's the difference, that being able to communicate effectively is what's going to open doors for you into management, into leadership. I could be wrong. And there are people who are completely happy, and digital forensics can be still a very lucrative, great field to be in, even if you maintain just that technical and puzzle solving skill set. But I do feel that the people who do bridge into those other roles, just from my personal experience, are the people who do have that ability to articulate to leadership and to laymen about technical complex issues in less technical terms. And so I think that's a really important, again, going back to those three. I love this concept that you've really brought up, that there's those three skills, and it doesn't matter if you're in threat hunting, MDR, DFIR, the technical, the communication, and the desire to solve the puzzle. Just spot on. Just so succinct way to say it too. I love that.
Well,
So
when we come to the communication side too, I'll say you have to know, especially in the IR type of role, when a company is calling you in an emergency, it is literally the worst day in their life, and or in their career, and hair's on fire, and it's a big emergency, and everything's going crazy, and you've got to be. I'm an old colleague of mine, and you used to say, this job is part investigator and part counselor, psychologist.
yes,
Because I mean, that's really what it is. They're freaking out, and you have to be that calm voice, and that the person that comes in with the plan. We've equated it as my team. I equate it to Mr. Wolf from Pulp Fiction, right? When there's all the bodies and the blood on the floor, and no, everybody's panicking and doesn't know what to do, and Mr. Wolf comes in and this is what you're going to do. We're going to clean these bodies up. This is going back here, or this. and they just take every step along the way to clean up the problem. And I mean, that's really kind of the role that you take, is coming in as this expert who has a plan and a calm voice and can take all the emergency going on around them and siphon it down to a clear, actionable path to get back to operational status, to get back. I mean, something bad has happened. I'm not saying we can make it all go away. I can't write a script that's going to decrypt your ransomed files, but we're going to get you moving forward in the right direction in the best possible way, and being able to guide people in the most stressful situation of their lives is so important, and being able to deflect stress as well is huge. Like, I've seen this time and again, because when somebody calls you in the most stressful situation of their lives, if you absorb that stress, you'll burn out way too fast. You have to be able
Yes.
to, because it's their worst day, but for us, it's just Tuesday, right? It's just another day.
And that's a good point, right? Because what is the worst day for somebody else is routine to us. And we have to think about the face we put on in that. We have to have empathy, but we also need to be able to guide them, like you said, through the steps, because we know the steps. This is something we do day in, day out. And I think that that is really important to reflect on. And that's a completely different type of communication. I'd like to change gears a little bit. You've seen so much in your career, and you've been at the forefront of this technology as we've evolved as a field over 20 years. How do you feel that technology has changed our field, the digital forensics, the incident response, the threat hunting fields over the last 2 decades?
That is a great question, and to me, this is what really keeps me excited right now, because we've evolved so much. What Back in the day, right, when I started, in IR or forensic investigation came up, you'd fly out to Bora Bora or wherever it is, and you'd be there all night imaging drives, and
Yep.
maybe you're outside, or maybe you go back to the lab with terabytes of images, and you start loading them up, and so I mean, you're literally going from weeks to get some kind of actionable finding or some kind of plan. It was just long and drawn out.
Bringing your Pelican case on the plane, flying to the location, going in at 5 p.m. when everybody else is leaving. Hi, we're here for the audit.
Yep.
Plugging into all the machines, making the forensic images, staying there all night, charging the customer for your flight, for your travel time, for all that time that you're sitting there making images that you're not doing forensic analysis. Like, that's expensive. Let's be honest.
It's
Like,
extremely expensive to the client. It's slow,
boring for us.
and yeah, boring, um, and you stay up all night, days on
Yep.
end, and at the end of the day, all that time is so important in incident response. This is time. So all that time it takes, that you just get to the point where, like, I think I know what happened now. All that time is time that the attacker is moving laterally, exfiltrating data, all kinds of stuff is going on, and you don't have enough of you to be able to take care of it, or to be able to take any action. Now, fast forward that 20 years to where we are now. It's so exciting. Um, we are a customer of Axiom. We're a very big fan of Magnet, and we, of course, Sentinel One, having that, within my group now, having that capability of using Sentinel One for threat hunting, quarantine systems in live time, remote shell to run additional tools, but still using Axiom to pull forensic artifacts all remotely. And so, like, a call can come in, and we can be solving literal investigations by the end of the day. I mean,
Yes.
it's amazing. Within hours, we've identified what happened, and we've quarantined and stopped the attacker from being able to move, and we blacklisted files across the entire network, and we're searching across thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of endpoints within a client environment, and still doing that deep dive forensics. So, and I love such. I mean, I think that there's no EDR XDR tool in the world that truly does deep dive forensics, but
Right.
being able to combine the two, and with an expert team to remotely do all of this, and that leads to being able to maintain your team better as well, because they're not always on the road. You know,
Yes.
able to stay at home and do faster, better investigations, much more cost effective for the client than it ever has in the past. To me, the age we're in right now is the dream. I mean, things are going, I have nowhere where they're going next. I mean, they're going to go do amazing things, but where we are now is from an incident response, digital forensics perspective, um, it's amazing.
Yeah,
And
multiple endpoints, specified collections that are targeted, automation when you can bring it in, the use of machine learning and artificial intelligence, the being able to be on multiple endpoints at once, and most importantly, what you said there, the remote collection of being able to work from home. Could you imagine if the technology was where it was 20 years ago with the pandemic?
I mean, we'd be shut down, right? I mean, there would be no way to investigate. I mean, yeah, if we were stuck in the old days, in the dinosaurs of forensics, yeah, the pandemic would have shut down any kind of response capabilities. Yeah, that's interesting.
Isn't that what's kind of cool about this field? Because you and I both worked in those dinosaur days when we were doing those things. But what's so cool about our field, and I hope everyone listening feels the same way, who does digital forensics or aspires to do digital forensics and incident response or threat hunting, what is so great is that we continually get to evolve and remake ourselves with such new technology, methodology. We're always getting to think about what's in the future. I mean, that's one of the things I love about my role is I'm always looking towards what can we do to make things better from a technology perspective. And it is just so exciting because we don't know today, you and I sitting here, we can't predict what our jobs will be like in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. And that is such an incredible feeling. Like that gives me that thrill. Like I feel like we keep going back to that point of that feeling. And I get that feeling being excited about the things that are coming in the future and how our work is going to be in the future. And, it's kind of exciting. It's a little bit about the cat and mouse. I'm sure that the adversaries are also excited about what they get to do in the future, but it's exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, I've always kind of equated bad guys versus the good guys, kind of like as the nuclear arms race back during the Cold
Yeah.
War, right? I mean, it was always going back and forth. The next step up, we were able to do this, and then the West would, oh, now we've got this, and it's going back and forth all the time. I think that's still kind of the path. I mean, I still have a lot of respect for the attackers out there. I mean, they're the bad guys, but
Oh, yeah.
they are in many ways evolving security as well, with the discovery of new exploits, the application of them, and we are responding with, well, we've got to new detection and new containment capabilities, and it's just super interesting being going back and forth, and seeing the two sides drive each other to better and better expertise and faster evolution of how we do our business. So it's yeah,
I mean,
it's exciting to see.
let's be honest. Sometimes when we see something, we go, "Oh, damn, that was good. Like that was an interesting way that you exploited or moved on the system, etc." We sometimes are like, "Oh, that was an interesting technique to attempt to cover your tracks. Glad we found it." So sometimes we, in the back of our brains, I assume that they do the same thing to us. I assume our adversaries are like, "Oh, nice move." It's a game of chess, right? At the end of the day, we're playing a lifelong game of chess.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly right. Yep, exactly. And it's just moving so with the technology we have today, and like we talked about before with the hunting, it's becoming. I don't know that we're gonna. I'm not saying we're suddenly gonna be able to take jumps ahead, but instead of always chasing the bad guy, which I feel like we've done for the last 20 years, what do they do? Okay, what can we do to meet that? What did they do to get the next best attack? What do we do to figure that out? With both the technology, from an AI, I hate to use the word AI too much because it's overused in security
Sure.
work, but at least from the application now of being able to have technology better predict what is malicious and what's not malicious is powerful. And then like
Predictive analysis.
yeah,
It's important.
exactly. And then like we talked about before, with being able to take threat hunting, being able to have access to all of the endpoints within an environment and proactively search. So I mean, Golden Spy from last year was a great example. This was a threat hunt we did for a client that they were recently expanding into China, but they were a global client. They had offices in UK and in US. They did work with the DoD, direct access to different US government and UK government organizations. Just expanding into China, what we found with the threat hunt was that when they go into China, and the Bank of China required them to install tax payment software.
Oh,
Right?
the government's requiring them to do this in order to work in the country, in order to do business.
Yeah, so it impacted not just them, but it turns out it impacted everybody doing operations in China.
Right.
And they had to install this. It was called the Intelligent Tax Software, produced by the Iceno Corporation. And what it was okay, great, you install it. And yes, you're able to pay your taxes, you're able to do all of that. But 2 hours after you install it, it silently installs another module. And this module reached out to the shadow network infrastructure. It had triple level persistence. It was looking for deletion of the malware, and if it's two of them, right? And they monitor each other. So if one was deleted, it would download and run it again. If one of it was stopped, it would restart it. Of course, starting as services as well. But at the end of the day, it remote arbitrary execution of code, upload, download of files. It was complete remote command and control. So basically, the Chinese nation-state threat actors had complete command and control of the endpoint where this is installed on every company doing business in China.
Oh my
it was
gosh.
massive. And we were able to break that story, and it was all over the news for most of the summer of 2020. But we were able to break it and stop it. It was kind of funny in that multi-part series. It was like they would try to when we outed them, they went to remove all of it, but by that time
it's too late. Those modules are installed.
Because we had released all these Yara rules and all these different detection capabilities, and it was being caught. And so they couldn't even remove their malware successfully. So it was an interesting back and forth. But yeah, that proactive threat hunt is what led to that. If you're not getting proactive and looking for the anomalies, that's the kind of thing you don't find for years.
Right. So, and what you saved in other businesses, or the businesses that had installed that with those Yara rules, and being able to look at those indicators of compromise is immensely valuable. Again, it goes back to that doing work at scale that's affecting multiple organizations. So we're getting a question from the audience, and it's something I want to touch in anyway. So Shakar says that he's new to the field and currently working as a security analyst, but wants to do a career in digital forensics. Can you guide people like me? What is your advice for folks who are looking to transition maybe from other security roles into digital forensics, incident response, threat hunting, etc.? You've got a wide experience here in terms of teaching and building teams in a variety of environments. So love to hear your advice.
Yeah, I mean, for people new coming into the field, I mean, there is a lot of training out there that's inexpensive or even free. And there's a lot of communities that you can join and get on and start to observe just the various listservs on what they're talking about. I think it's great to play as well. Things like when I set up my George Mason course, when I first started teaching there, everything started from, I don't know if you remember, but it started like it all built on each other. So starting with the most basic bits and bytes and sectors and how that makes up, even that's starting to sound dated, but how that would make up a magnetic hard drive, how data was stored.
Yeah, we didn't have SSDs back then.
Yeah, I know. But starting with that all the way through to recovering email and deleted files, all the way up to malware analysis and volatile memory analysis. And I think if you take a look from both the offensive and defense, you can set up VMs now on one system very easily and launch little attacks. Whether you just set up an open RDP and you connect to it and pull something out over wherever from an RDP, okay, great. Look at that and look at it with volatility, or even grab an image or pull forensic artifacts and make, okay, how do I determine that that the attacker came in from RDP? You already know how you got in because you did it. How can you know from a forensic point of view, how did they get in and what did they use and what artifacts did that leave on your system? I mean, I think that still remains good advice for forensic investigators. There's all kinds of, that's what's also interesting about this field is it's always something new. Google is your best friend. Somebody out there, always be looking. But if you can't find the answer, just test it out. Have a VM set up, recreate the
That's it.
environment, run it, and then observe what happened. What's different on the system now than 5 minutes ago before you started this, and learn these new artifacts. So I think that's I think that's kind of my advice would be to continue in that security analyst or sysadmin role. That's great experience from a technical point of view. But get out there, look for some of that various training or malware analysis training, or just to get some more exposure. There's a lot of good reading material out there that's free from different attacks that are happening, different new techniques from a forensic perspective. Just read that so you can be conversant in it and learn, and then test in your home environment. And if you've got the money, right? If I'm trying to go from a cost-effective perspective,
Yeah.
but if you do have time and money, George Mason, George Washington. I mean, there's some really good master's degree programs out there. SANS, of course, is rather spendy, but it's outstanding training. So there's all kinds of options that can use to kind of advance your career, both from a cost-effective or if money's less of an issue, from that perspective.
If you go to GMU, I'd love to have you in my mobile device forensics class. But as far as free options, just want to throw out there that the Magnet Virtual Summit's running all of May. On Mondays, there's hands-on labs. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, there's going to be lectures. And then each Wednesday, there's different things to build your skills. We have a 3-hour digital forensics CTF that will really help you grow. I'm helping build that. And then on the 19th, we're actually having a mentorship day, and this is all free. So that's the reason I want to mention to you, Shahar, available in 3 different time zones, but so Singapore, UK, and US. But all the talks are being repeated in the different time zones. And then as well as the hands-on labs, the mentorship day. So on May 19th, we're having a mentorship day. And if you go sign up now, there are still spots for the one-to-one mentorship sessions. You'll get a resume review. You'll meet with an expert in the field who's been doing digital forensics for a long time, and you can discuss your particular path with them. They'll help you out. So those are one-on-one mentoring sessions. I think there's about 40 or so left, so hurry up and sign up for that. And that same day, there's also going to be a virtual career fair and a virtual EDU fair. So you can speak to companies that are hiring digital forensics examiners, as well as talk to places like SANS, like GMU, like Champlain College, et cetera, that are hiring. So please check out that mentorship day. I think that'll be huge for you. And it's exactly the stuff Brian's talking about. And Brian, just 100% testing in your own environment. I couldn't agree more. Like actually seeing the artifacts when you know what's happened, when you test known, you're able to learn so much more about what normal is and what not normal is. And I just love that advice. Thank you so much for being our guest today. It's been just an absolute pleasure catching back up with you and getting to chat. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. It was great. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Before we go, I just want to share some upcoming events. This week is DFIR WSEU. Bunch of things going on in the community. I'm there virtually. There's also a call for presentations for the SANS DFIR Summit and for HTCIA closed tomorrow, March 31st, I think noon Central Time for both of them. So if you have info to share, you've been doing research, get a proposal in it. Get that in. If that's too short a time, DFRWS US has a call for presentations out that's open through April 12th. So I hope to see some of you at a live virtual event. In addition to being at DFRWSEU this week, I'm going to be presenting at the National Cybercrime Conference, April 26th through 30th. And then, of course, I'll be doing a ton of stuff, and there's a ton of great stuff. So I'll see you at the Magnet Virtual Summit if you join us there throughout the month of May. And then live, I'm so looking forward to seeing human beings again in real life. Techno Myrtle Beach, I'll be there in June, and then also at the SWGD Scientific Working Group on Digital Evidence. So I hope to see you guys at some of those events. There's so much going on in the community. Send in those proposals. HTCIA, NSANS, and DFRWS are all virtual conference, so share your content. Next week, we'll have Matt Mitchell on, who's one of our virtual keynotes at the Magnet Virtual Summit. So please check that out and come see his talk. I saw Brett Shavers was in the audience. He's one of our other keynotes. Full schedule for Cash Up is up on our website, magnetforensics.com/cash up. Coming up, we have Ori Corbello, Steve Watson, Maddie Brumbelow, Jeff Sleva and Jeff McGillivray, and then our special 50th episode that'll be live from MVS. So we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.